Read. Read was the first word that the Almighty said to the prophet. Now, some say he meant recite. Whether it's read or it's recite, the message is the same. Learn. Learn. And in order to learn, you need to have an education. How often do we say that education is a lifelong journey? Well, in order for it to be a lifelong journey, it needs a beginning. And that beginning happens in school. I am the father of 3 beautiful daughters that I affectionately call the A-Team. My eldest daughter, Alicia, unfortunately couldn't be here today. She's 23. She's graduated with the University of Carleton University in science degree, and now she's doing a couple of years of a program and a diploma program following her passion of sports management. My second daughter, Azana, who is here tonight, is a 3rd year at the University of Toronto, and she is looking forward to doing a postgraduate work after she finishes her first degree. My 3rd daughter, Elena, whom I call my sunshine, is also here, and she's 18. Now, Elena, at a very young age, was diagnosed with a learning disability. She has a global learning delay. And as she turns 18 and all her friends graduate and think about going to a post-secondary education, my wife Fatima and I have been observing her own passions and her own desires to want to continue to learn. Now, this speech is not about the education system in Ontario, and it's not about the challenges that people with mental health face here or anywhere else in the world. Rather, I tell you this story because what my wife Fatima and I have seen is an intrinsic, innate passion, desire that Elena has to learn. Now remember, this is someone who actually has a learning disability. So I tell you this story because I want you to think about all of those boys and girls in Pakistan or in anywhere in the world who are being deprived of a chance to learn. How much pent-up frustration, how much desire, how much anger, how much want must they feel to go to school, to learn, to have that journey begin of lifelong learning. It's clearly a natural state. It is as natural as wanting to eat when you're hungry or breathe when you're gasping for air. Education is the same as both of those things. The command read didn't say, you read to the prophet. It didn't say, all men read. It didn't say, boys read. The word is read. It is directed at every one of us in all our shapes and all our forms, and that includes girls. So that's the what. Education. Education is the reason that we're all here. But I want to also talk about the why. So aside from the fact that it is a commandment from the Almighty himself, if that hasn't convinced you that education is important, there's lots more reasons that you should be convinced. First and foremost, it's just the right thing to do. Why should more than half of the population in the world be treated differently than the other half? We are all, after all, equal. That is the intent. But it's also the smart thing to do. When you look around the world, governments are struggling with issues around the economy, they're struggling with issues of labor, they're struggling with issues of skills, they're struggling with issues of productivity. Right? In order to address those challenges, we can put all the emphasis on the men, or we can expand that circle and bring in the women. We are, in many ways, where we are because the system, the education system, has often discriminated to the favor of men. Well, guys, that makes us responsible for where we are today. And where are we today? Not such a great place in the world. I think the power that women bring forward is something that now more than ever is going to be necessary. One of the phrases that you've heard the most about tonight, just coincidentally, was this notion of EQ, the notion of emotional quotient. We're living through our fourth wave, the wave of technology, the wave of artificial intelligence and disruption, and there's a lot of things going on out there that businesses and individuals and schools and governments are struggling to deal with. I'm in a business where 70% of my employees approximately are women. What I've observed is there is actually a fundamental difference between men and women. And while some may dispute this, my experience is women simply have better EQ than men. Frankly, I think if there were more women in charge of the world, we'd probably have Mideast peace. We probably wouldn't be in a financial crisis, and some people may not even have become the president of the United States. That's called playing to the crowd. But that notion of EQ now is more important than perhaps ever before, because if you believe the way artificial intelligence is going and robots are going to be doing all the thinking anyways, we're going to need this softer side, this ability to think intuitively, this ability to have instincts, this ability to connect with audiences and bring people together, the ability to tell stories and bring some comprehension as to what's going on in the world. I think the future belongs to women. And I'm not just saying that because tonight's event is about that or that I have introduced the fact that I have 3 beautiful daughters. I'm saying it because it's going to turn out to be true. And I think you're going to hear more and more about why. This whole notion of Me Too and Time's Up and everything else that's going on, the time has just simply come. This will look back in time and history and say, this was the generation, this was the era, these were the people that actually corrected a very fundamental wrong that has been dominant in society up until this point. So I look forward to having the women take charge. Please. Now, that's easier said than done. How are we going to do this? How are we going to do it with all the challenges that I've just pointed out that we face? I think the first place it starts is with men. It is up to men to change their thinking. I have had the pleasure of meeting some remarkable women, some of whom are here tonight, others I just met as recently as Friday when I was in Calgary, who have come from a family of all daughters, in some cases 4, some cases 5, in one case 7. And when you speak with them, what you hear is, it's because of my dad that I was able to go and get my education, that I was able to go and become successful in whatever it is that I chose to do. Running a business, getting elected to political office, becoming a teacher or principal, whatever it is. They pointed out to me that it was their father who was their biggest inspiration, the one to whom they're most grateful and to the one whom they consider a hero. Now that means we need more heroes. We need more men to change their attitudes about girls and about women. So it starts with us, particularly, I dare say, men who only have sons. It starts with you. How you behave, please. How you behave will shape the minds of how your sons behave. So it's really important that we own that men need to change. The other area that I want to touch on is the role of government. Armughan mentioned that this is what I do for a living in terms of being a public affairs practitioner. But here's what I do know, and with respect to anybody in government. Governments follow. They don't lead. They need to get elected. They follow wherever there is that popular parade being built, and they get in front of it, and then they get elected. They're noble, they're good people, they want to do things, but what gets in the way is the need to get reelected. You have the capacity to shape the decisions that our governments make. It is wrong to hear that in Pakistan you're getting 700 rupees or dollars. Is it dollars? I hope it's dollars. Versus the amount of money that gets spent on things that are not unrelated to education, particularly things that aren't advancing the world, but perhaps threatening the world. All our governments are guilty of putting their priorities in things, whether it's in the military, in the name of national security, or whatever the case might be, or whether it's in other areas because, they want to help support the community from which they come. Those are choices that governments make on how to spend your money, whether in Canada or in Pakistan. So not only do we need to change our behaviors, we need to recognize the power of people now in today's society to get governments to do the right thing. Use your social networks. Use your relationships. Use some of the privileged access I'm sure some of you have to your governments. And take advantage of those relationships. Governments' attitudes towards education shouldn't need to be convinced. It should be instinctive on their part that investing in education is investing in your nation. Investing in your nation advances the collective interests of globalization. This should be the natural thinking, one would think, but too often for governments, that is not. So that's another way of going about and changing things. We also need to modernize. We need to modernize what we saw there from the classrooms to what's possible. The pace of change that's taking place in society today is incredibly faster than anything that we've ever experienced. Whatever it is you think about it, you might have taken a week, it's now taking a day. It might have taken a month, it's now taking a week. It might have taken a year, it's taking less than that. So the pace of change, the children in Pakistan or anywhere else in the world that are being denied education, they're going to fall further and further behind as others in society that can afford a good education are going to get further and further ahead. And that's going to mean you're going to need more money to invest to get them to catch up. So it's a goal, I think it's a goal of yours, and it should be a goal of yours, to modernize the education system with infrastructure investments, not just in the things that we already heard about, classrooms and washrooms and so forth, obviously important, but get governments to invest more in Wi-Fi. Get governments to invest more in the tablets and the infrastructures that are necessary so that it's not just the schools that you're involved with, it's all schools are having an access to getting a better education. Now, that takes investment. And I can't make the appeal the way our real keynote speaker tonight did. And Ali, I was sitting there and saying, how did I draw this straw where I have to speak after her? That was phenomenal. But your ask was very well put. She asked for you to open your hearts, to open your minds, and to open your wallets. I hope what you heard from her, and perhaps a little bit of what you heard from me, allows you to do that tonight, because it is necessary. We can't let children, not just in Pakistan, but anywhere in the world, fall behind. It is what the Almighty has asked of you. So if you give, it's a twofer. You're doing the right thing, but you're also getting the bonus of getting that recognition when the time comes to account for your time here on earth to the Almighty to say, I heard your command. Read. Thank you.